All right, let's dive right into this explainer and really unpack the psychological depths of Stephen Chbosky's The Perks of Being a Wallflower. Our absolute focus today is on deep literary analysis for your upcoming English exam. So if you're prepping to write an analytical essay on character development, narrative structure, thematic symbolism, or underlying motives, you are exactly in the right place. We are definitely not just summarizing the plot today. We're going to tear right into the subtext and look at exactly why the author made the narrative choices he did.
So let's kick things off with a pretty massive question about narrative choice. Why in the world did Chbosky structure the entire novel as a series of letters to a totally unnamed stranger? When you get an exam question on narrative form, you've really got to look beyond the surface level. Charlie isn't just passively keeping a diary here. He's writing outwards, desperately seeking some kind of connection, but he's doing it in a completely untraceable way.
And this brilliantly illustrates his underlying motive. He writes, "I just need to know that someone out there listens and understands." The epistolary format, a novel written as a series of letters, it really isn't just a quirky, stylistic choice by the author. For Charlie, it's literally a psychological survival mechanism. Think about it. He's a deeply isolated teenager trying to process immense grief and trauma. And this anonymous format creates a safe little vacuum where he can finally be heard without the terrifying threat of actual social judgment.
To help you build out a really strong essay scaffold, we've broken this explainer down into 4 core sections. First, the epistolary narrative choice. Second, the symbolism of literature. Third, observation versus participation. And finally, unpacking trauma and unity.
Okay, let's jump straight into section 1, the epistolary narrative choice.
Take a look at this specific line from one of his very early letters. Charlie tells his friend that he deliberately changes names and hides his identity, writing, "I didn't enclose a return address. I mean nothing bad by this." If you're writing a paragraph about Charlie's character development, this is your perfect starting point. It proves to us as readers that he is absolutely terrified of vulnerability and real-world exposure. He desperately craves intimacy, sure, but he throws up this massive firewall because being truly known feels incredibly dangerous to him. He's protecting his identity because, well, at this stage in the novel, his identity is completely fractured.
Which leads us nicely into section 2, the symbolism of literature.
Throughout his freshman year, Charlie's English teacher, Bill, assigns him these specific extracurricular books, famously telling him to be a filter rather than a passive sponge. Now, Bill isn't just handing out busywork here. He's giving Charlie a crucial framework to process his own chaotic emotions safely through fictional characters, way before he actually has to process them in his real life.
So, the real takeaway here is how Charlie maps his own life onto these texts. When he reads Peter Pan, he immediately zeroes in on the idea of a boy who refuses to grow up and feels betrayed by adulthood. That directly mirrors his own deep fears of maturity and losing his childhood innocence. Later on, when he reads The Fountainhead, he extracts this philosophy that every single person has to live for their own life before sharing it. He's essentially using these texts to workshop his own intense struggles with building an independent identity.
Now pay attention here, because this is a massive turning point you can use for an essay argument. Towards the end of the year, Charlie takes his physical copies of these books, The Great Gatsby, To Kill a Mockingbird, The Catcher in the Rye, and he gives them to Sam and Patrick as presents. When he gives away his physical books, passing on that literature symbolizes his huge transition from being just a passive receiver to someone who is actively sharing his identity with the people he loves. It's a physical manifestation of him finally saying, "Hey, this is who I am."
All right, section 3, observation versus active participation.
You've got to look closely at Patrick's exact definition of the book's title here. At a party, he toasts Charlie and says, "You see things, you keep quiet about them, and you understand. You're a wallflower." This is such a pivotal moment. Patrick gives Charlie's condition a name, validating his deep empathy. But at the exact same time, it highlights his extreme passivity. Being a wallflower is framed as a compliment in this moment, but as the novel goes on, we see that staying on the wall is actually a dangerous symptom of Charlie's inability to participate in his own life.
If you get hit with an analytical exam question about character foils, absolutely use this comparison from the text. Charlie compares himself to Sam's older boyfriend, Craig. He notes that if Craig took a picture of Sam, Craig would think the photo was beautiful because of his own skill as a photographer. But if Charlie took it, he'd know it's beautiful purely because of Sam. Craig represents the self-centered, slightly arrogant participation in the world. Meanwhile, Charlie represents selfless, yet totally paralyzing observation. He completely erases his own self from the equation.
This whole dynamic really comes to a head when Charlie contemplates a specific line from The Fountainhead, "I would die for you, but I won't live for you."
Charlie struggles so deeply with this concept, he realizes that he wouldn't actually mind living for Sam, essentially just subsuming his entire existence into hers. And guys, this is the ultimate danger of the Wallflower. When you only observe, you rely on other people to do the living for you. The overarching goal of Charlie's character arc is to finally make the choice to actively participate in his own narrative rather than just chronicling what his friends are doing.
And that brings us to our final section, unpacking trauma and unity.
Charlie's psychological fragmentation? It is definitely not random, and Chabosky leaves a brilliant trail of breadcrumbs for us. Track this escalating timeline in your essays to show exactly how moments of intense emotional resonance or social pressure trigger his repressed traumatic memories. He describes feeling this peaceful unity with the world, right? But this often tips straight into dissociative states. We see it when he's forced to wait outside during a tense moment at a party and just falls into panicky crying. Later, after mailing a letter, his mind plays hopscotch through these intrusive thoughts of winter, of his Aunt Helen, of secrets, culminating in him lying in the road making a snow angel, completely disconnected from reality. His passivity is actually a profound freeze response to unacknowledged trauma. The true climax of his entire character arc is summed up perfectly by Sam's advice, which Charlie finally internalizes. It's okay to feel things, and be who you are about them. Overcoming his trauma requires stepping out of that comfortable role of the silent, objective observer. It means he has to stop minimizing his own pain by constantly comparing it to others, and start actually validating his own emotions as real and worthy of being felt.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a killer essay prompt to really synthesize your thoughts for your exam. Ask yourself, and maybe even argue this in your next paper, is Charlie's hyperempathy a genuine gift of wisdom, or is it merely a symptom of his pain that he absolutely must overcome to truly live? Chabosky's brilliant novel suggests it might just be both. Keep this deep structural analysis in your back pocket as you prep, and you are going to do incredibly well. Good luck!